They would shoal off the coast of Shetland from, say, mid-June. A little bit later, different shoals of herring would be worth taking off the east coast of Scotland, and so on and so forth down the coast until you got to Yarmouth, when the Yarmouth herring shoals were really at their peak in the autumn. As early as medieval times, a principal means of catching herring was by drift nets. These were curtains of nets that hung in the sea.
Well, you see, you used to have a fleet of about 86 to 90 herring nets. Well, you used to just drift with the tide, and the herring used to swim into the nets. Then it usually took you about 20 minutes to shoot the nets, done before a wind, and then if you got a big catch of herring, it could take you anything for 12 to 14 hours to haul it.
In the early years of the 20th century, the herring trade was booming, and fleets landed catches throughout the east coast ports. Some of the herring went to make kippers, a popular breakfast food from late Victorian times. The fish were processed in smokehouses in and around the harbours.
Come all ye fisher lassies, ays, come all wi me, be Cairn, Balgan, Gamry, and Fay and Baralachlee, frae Bucky and Fay, Aberdeen and all the country round. We're a watty got the herring, we're a watty Yarmouth tune.
But most of the herring caught by these fleets was salted and exported to countries in Eastern Europe, where the fish was part of the staple diet. Thousands of women, mostly from Scotland, followed the fleets to gut and pack the fish that the men had landed.
My mother was fisher. She used to gut the herring. They got it in Peterhead, and then they went to Yarmouth. When the boats went to Yarmouth, they went to Yarmouth with the boats and got it. They slit the herring up, took out the gut, put it away, and then threw the herring into the barrel. My mum and her sister, they were the gutters. My aunt was the packer. She packed the barrels. And when you went in, you just saw them all in a row, gutting a herring, and the other ones away packing.
Now there's coopers there and curers there.
They were happy when they were working, strangely enough. It depended how much herring was in.
And you wish the fish had been all left in the sea by the time you finished cutting herring on the Yarmouth Quay.
Home movie makers in Peterhead and St Ives were using film to record everyday life. But in Hull, Britain's biggest fishing port, filming life at sea had an altogether different purpose. Ship owners wanted to improve the efficiency of their fleets, and they employed scientists and engineers with film cameras to document working practices aboard the ships.
Well, this is the camera that I used. I've managed to resurrect it. It's an old Bolex, clockwork driven, and surprisingly I think it still works.
Alan Hopper, seen here 50 years ago in the blue bobble hat, was an engineer with expertise in the construction and repair of trawlers.
There's winches running and there's wires with heavy strains on them. And he used to stand up on the forecastle head there with his camera, recording everything for his records. And I used to think to myself, God, you know, is he going to be safe up there with all these wires swinging around?
Ken Knox was a skipper aboard some of the trawlers on which Alan filmed.
It's funny how you get scientists and people coming up from ashore mixing with the deckhands and the crew. You used to think, you know, don't get in the way, don't upset them. But they did a good job. And we can still sit and see them films of us both working on technology and making the fishing industry a better one, and fish coming onto the market in a better state.
Unlike the small-scale family businesses of Peterhead and St Ives, Hull was dominated by big fishing companies.
Hull and Grimsby were large fleet owners, 10, 20, 30 boats per owner, and they were organised in a much more commercial way. And I think that's the essential difference, was the capital nature and the business ethos of what was relatively new business. I mean, Hull and Grimsby are basically from the 1850s, brand new ports, literally created because the railways were there to carry fish.
The St Andrews Fish Dock opened in 1883, and by the 1930s, Hull and Grimsby had become the biggest fishing ports in the world. The dockside was like a bustling village, with every trade imaginable. Hull was a product of the 19th century Industrial Revolution in the north of England. Its fish fed the rapidly expanding workforce in the textile, steel and mining areas. In its heyday, more than 50 fish trains would leave the port each week, and much of the whitefish, cod and haddock, was destined for the fish and chip trade.
Between about 1840 and 1880, somebody, and we don't know who really, put fish with chips, right? And the fish and chip shop was created. You could argue that fish and chips was the first fast food, and certainly many of the first places that utilised fish and chips and fish and chip shops were places like the textile district in northern England, where both man and woman was out at work and a cheap, nutritious form of food was important. So there suddenly developed a mass market for fish.
To meet this huge demand, Hull and Grimsby's fishing companies found a way of using their large fleets more productively. They organised their ships into what became known as boxing fleets.
The people who worked on those fleets were probably some of the most skilled fishermen or seafarers of their age, or indeed any age. How a boxing fleet would work, he would sail out to a fishing ground, and what they did was every day when they caught the fish, they packed it in boxes and then transferred that fish to fast steam cutters that ran the fish into Billingsgate in London.
But by the 1930s, stocks of fish in the North Sea were beginning to decline. The very success of box fleet fishing would have far-reaching consequences for Hull's fishing industry. But for the fishermen at the time, there was a more pressing concern: how to deal with the harsh conditions of the North Sea.
I was 15 in the April, and I joined this ship in the January, so I was only just 15. And we sailed from Hull, and it was beginning to snow when we sailed through the locks. I remember that.
Robert Rowntree worked on one of the last boxing fleets, just before the Second World War.
He used to gut the fish and wash it, and put it in the various medium haddock, small codling under, and put them in boxes. Then the next day, he'd get all these boxes, put them in the boat, and row them back to the carrier. They were heavy boats, very heavy boats, not like an ordinary ship's lifeboat. You'd take the boat into the carrier, tie a boat up, and then one used to get on the deck of the carrier, and as the bow of the boat came up, you who was in the boat like me used to get the box and lift it as best we could. There were only 5 stone boxes, like, so the ones were always full anyhow. And he used to pull it up onto the bulwark to get the box, and he would then transfer the box to the hold. Oh, it could be pretty dangerous. We lost a lot of men through the boats, because it's, I don't know whether, when you go to sea and you think it's flat calm, well, if you're down in a little boat, it's not so flat calm. It's more of a wobbly, wavy sort of thing. I could hardly see over the gunwale of the boat, and I can remember a very old friend of the family, he was in one of the boats going back as we were going back, and he was passing me, and he'd sung out, he said, "That'll fix you all right, Robert, will it?" I said, I could hardly speak, you know.
Robert Rowntree's experience of danger was shared by fishing communities throughout Britain. Fishing was always one of Britain's most dangerous occupations, and this made it hard for wives and mothers like Liz Anderson in Peterhead.
I used to worry if it was rough at all, or if the forecast was bad. I used to be glad to see them coming in, because you just worried, and you didn't know what would happen.
I never had any fear of the sea. I respected the sea, but I was never afraid of the sea. Now, I would look at the coal miner going down underground. I would have been scared to do that. Or if you see the steeple jog going up and climbing up steeples, I'd be scared of that, but not at the fishing. And I can remember coming through the Caledonia Canal with one of my boats, and I really thought I wouldn't see my wife and family again. But I was, well, it comes down to faith.
Danger was a constant problem, but there were others that fishermen found less easy to predict. The wider economic and political conditions in which they found themselves could have devastating consequences. For herring fishermen like Donald Anderson's family, the years after World War I were particularly harsh.
After the First World War and the Russian Revolution that accompanied it, Russia was effectively no longer a large-scale market for herring caught in Britain. Similarly, in Eastern Europe, many of the newly independent countries were quite keen to develop their own herring industries. The kipper becomes less popular as people turn to breakfast cereals in the 20th century. And again, all these sort of features lead to a decline in the herring industry, which hangs on there, but gradually becomes smaller and smaller and less important.
Many went out of business, and Donald Anderson was one of the few left fishing for herring. He managed to survive by innovating and taking risks. In the 1960s, he changed his catching methods from drift to the more efficient purse nets.
When I decided that I would go to the purse net fishing, the whole of the northeast of Scotland said that I was crazy.
The net, whose underside was closed, or pursed, surrounded the shoals. The fish were trapped, then scooped out and into the boat. Pursing meant that more fish could be caught on each trip than by using the older drifting method.
And I often hear him saying, "Oh, this is why my father did it, and this is the way my grandfather did it." But I used to say, no, not necessarily so. I was always looking for better ways to do things.
Off the shores of Cornwall, the brothers David and Alex Stevens are using trawl nets to catch their quarry, shoals of whitefish.
We tow nets, we're trawling, and sometimes we work one net, sometimes we work two. They brush the surface of the seabed, and we create a sand cloud. That's what we do.